Okay, yeah, a lot to touch on there because I guess the Fed is using this data to remain hawkish and to sort of keep interest rates where they are, and there's even talk about potentially raising them. So do you think that's a mistake that they're currently making?
I'm honestly, again, I have to, when we get to this and talking about raising rates at this point, if you look at the very start of the last 5 to 7 recessions, you'll actually see that inflation was lower before that, going into those recessions. At this point, the inflation level is lower than those. So people talking about inflation being a problem at this point, I mean, again, if we have that kind of rollover that I'm talking about, then we have the worst standing point for a potential recession in terms of recession, because we were only at 2 point, what was it the other day here, that, that really will give us a situation where we will soon find ourselves in a deflationary scenario. And people in talking about inflation, you're talking about, well, yeah, they always do that. If you look at the FOMC statement in October 31st, 2007, you will actually see how the Fed was also talking about inflation there. There has been an uptick in inflation, and they are carefully watching that, and they will take further action if needed to make sure the inflation didn't get out of hands there. That is the same thing they are saying right again. But we have to remember in 2007 that when they were saying that, and we are, as I see it, the same place in the business cycle as we were back then. Then inflation was not the problem going into those next months. The deflation was. I mean, that was the deflationary bust really setting off. So I think, again, because inflation is a lagging indicator, which actually tells us where we were in the real economy 6 to 9 months ago, that is why we are seeing and hearing these talks, because people are saying, oh, but things are, inflation is a problem. Inflation is not a problem at this point. Deflation will soon be. And that's because the Fed is way too hawkish at this point, way too hawkish. And we are probably heading into almost a recession before the Fed actually understands it. And I see in 25 here, we'll see emergency cuts. Again, coming back to 2007, 2008, you actually saw that how the Fed, as I said, the 31st of October was focusing on this. This was in the quarter where the economy was already contracting, and it contracted by 1.6% in Q4 2007, and the Fed was talking about inflation. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And in January of 2008, which was just 2 months after the FOMC statement where they talked about that, the Fed was panic cutting, first by 75 basis point by mid-January of 2008, and then by another 50 14 days later. This is how data dependent the Fed is. They probably are, but they are looking at lagging indicators. They're looking at things that are not in the front window. So, but what was happening earlier on, and that is a mistake. So I think they're doing the same mistake, and this time even more bigger than that. And we also have to remember, again, going into the inflation spike, what was it that the Fed was talking about? Yellen, she was talking about, we think the Fed will, the inflation rate will top out around 2.5% or 3% or something. It went to 9.1. So they are clueless. And I have to say that